All right, has it worked? Are we on? Okay, perfect. Fantastic. Let me get this going here. Sorry about that, everybody. We had some technical difficulties where we couldn't input the correct information, but here we are. Hello. And it looks like, am I the only face on there, or can we see everybody like the Hollywood Squares style? I don't know what they call it. Or is it just me? Oh, there we go. Okay. So, I don't know. Yeah. All right. So hi, everybody. Sorry about that. Took us a little bit. Just wanted to say thank you so much for coming. We had a little bit of the technical difficulties there, but we're all good now. So my name is Alex Penland. I am the original events manager for From Arthur's Seat, which clearly the original event didn't go to plan, and this one didn't quite go to plan either. But anyways, I am thrilled to welcome everybody to the second online launch event. If you couldn't make it yesterday, From Arthur's Seat is the yearly anthology that we put out by our cohort. Every member of the MSc Creative Writing program is allowed to submit, and the whole book is produced completely by the students. So everybody here has been involved either, I mean, not just with submitting, but also with editing, with proofreading, with putting things together. I know we have our resident web design. We have Lena is looking in, who is our editor-in-chief. So everybody has been really, really wonderfully involved. It's fantastic. I just want to say a big thank you to everybody who's put their time in to make this book work, because it looks absolutely fantastic. I wish I don't have my copy yet due to social distancing, but if you look it up on the website, it is absolutely beautiful. When you have it in your hands, it is absolutely beautiful. So I have the link in there, and we'll repost it in a second on where you can buy the book. Yeah, so I just want to give a special thank you to Lena Kraus, who's our editor-in-chief, and I wanted to say thank you for all the work she's done putting it together over the course of the year. It's been this massive undertaking, and she's just done a really wonderful job with it. And I wanted to give a special thank you to Lauren Thurman, who put together all of the pieces for the Zoom readings. She's set everything up, and she set up all the readers and organized it all, and she just did a really wonderful job. So thank you so much. And last but not least, just one more shout out to everybody here, all the readers and all the authors who are going to be reading today. You guys are fantastic. I'm really excited to get started. I'm sorry it's a little bit late. So you guys are rock stars. This is going to go pretty much the same as it did yesterday. We'll have 2 readers and then a couple of questions, and then 2 readers and then a couple of questions, and I'll be reading off of the running commentary on YouTube, so I can see what you're saying. Please feel free, as questions come up, please write it in the comments. Otherwise, I have to make them up myself, and I'll read them to our authors, and then they'll answer questions and sort of like a little bit of a give and take. So yeah, we're going to start off with just a few questions before we begin. I was going to say as people come in, but people are already in. We're running a little behind. But I wanted to ask our authors how your stories changed, how you felt about the editing process. How did your stories change as we were going through this over the course of the year? And I think, Julia, you were going to go first there.
Yeah, so it was super interesting to just work on a piece. How it changed at the beginning, it was like so long, and then I cut everything from it, and I changed all the the setting and the chronology and everything, and I was so happy with it. So I'm so happy to have had the workshop and the 2 editing processes.
Thank you so much. And we had Katie, how did your story change over the course of the year?
Yeah, so this was my first short story that I can say with any sort of conviction that was complete and that I actually wrote. And so for me, the editing process was super helpful. It kind of allowed me to look a little more objectively at sentences that, for example, I really loved, but just didn't need to be there, and really distill from all the mass of first, second, third drafts, distill from that what actually is essential for the story. And it was really helpful having other people looking at it, pulling out what was important, and then encouraging me to love what I wrote, but be able to let it go if it didn't need to be there. So that was that.
Such a hard balance to be able to strike with your own work. No, I definitely have a hard time with like trying to reconcile what I love and then also my own inner editor is really, it's difficult.
You're muted.
There we go. I know we also, the process of going through the MSc, I feel like changed my writing over the course of the year. So how did the MSc affect you guys and what you chose to submit? I think we have Bhavika, you had an answer for this?
Yes. Hi. Okay, so I learned a lot in the MSc, but one of the first things that I learned, and I was like, whoa, I didn't think about that, was the concept of time in fiction and how it's so different from real life. So in real life, we'll go to a grocery store and we'll buy one thing and we'll do another thing. And then we'll go to the counter and we'll pay and then we'll walk out. But if you wrote a story like that, it'd be quite boring to read, possibly. And I just found it really interesting how in reality, while you are grocery shopping, though physically you're doing very few things, your mind may be going through a storm. So you might be thinking about, who broke up with you and what's going to happen 10 years from now. And you might go into your past or into the future. So I really wanted to experiment with that in my story, like take a very mundane situation and see how the character's mind is going through a world of change. And that's what I did in my story, I5. And I definitely don't think I would have noticed that without the MSc.
That's fantastic. That's such an interesting way to sort of look at the characters when the action itself may not necessarily be enthralling, but you know the inner mind. That's really wonderful. Monica, you had your response as well?
The MSc program really helped me because our workshops, I thought, were very useful, where if you wanted to bounce your piece off of other people while you're editing it, it really worked wonders for me because they gave me a lot of positive feedback and a lot of constructive criticism, which I put into the piece that I submitted. And because I like surprises in real life and in my stories, when I was allowed to do my workshops and get all these people to read my stories, I could see whether they worked, whether they didn't work, and it was very useful that way. I thought the course was helping us set up these nice editorial boards like in different paces, so that was great.
That's wonderful. The workshops have been invaluable, I think, over the course. They're fantastic. We're going to start off with, we're going to do this in pairs. So we're going to start off with Julia and Katie. I will introduce them both and then you guys will read and then we'll go back and do some questions. So reminder, ask questions in the comments because I can see them and we'll go through then. All right, Julia first. Julia Guillermina is a bilingual writer, 1/4 French, 3/4 Spanish, who decided the best she could do to become a writer was to come to Edinburgh and have a go at English as well. She's a fan of both story and history, loves linguistics, writes fan fiction, plays the violin, and never stops. She believes humor and imagination are lifesavers. She's also the FAS treasurer and fundraiser, and she did an incredible job with a couple of the fundraisers earlier this year. Katie Hay is an aspiring novelist and Christian artist from Sapelo Island, Georgia, USA. She loves conversations, creative endeavors of just about any kind, experimenting in the kitchen, physical activity, especially outside, musical things, and being a goof with others. Though this current season has encouraged her to sit and write quite a lot, she's very much looking forward to being able to gather, play, and laugh with friends. Her written work airs on the side of the longer fantastic and realistic fiction for kids and young adults. This is her first published short story. Julia, take it away.
Yeah, I was just going to say you have to put out something. I don't know if that's done. So here's my story. Wild Wind. That evening, I took the bus that stops near the marketplace. I ensconced myself back on the priority seat. It had been one of the windiest days in Edinburgh. The wind had pulled and pushed me all around the town, messing with my hat, with my open coat, making me fear my feet would leave the ground. My hurting old knee had been complaining, and I reveled in the ride. When we arrived, the night had come, and the wind had faded. I was not looking ahead of me. I was not observing the people going by. I was just letting my eyelids fall on my eyes, narrowing my sight to the pavement. I saw a bulge of Egyptian blue, the beggar's sleeping bag. I had spotted the beggar that same morning, wrapped in his bedroll, stretching out both arms ahead of him, a paper cup in his hands. His whole body leaned in. His strong legs supported the effort, engaging his back, muscles, a future backache. The people around him walked the market, buying or these wax wrappers, couples, families, groups of students, all eating next to each other, sharing body heat in this heaven on the cold, windy day. If somebody gave the beggar a coin, he shook the cup to jog others' memories about the sound of money, the existence of money. He looked like a folk creature, half human, half sack. I forgot about him as I have forgotten about so many beggars. He came back to my mind with the existence of the mad wind, the one that comes when everything settles down, the wind that ensures life does not stay the same, the wind problems and solutions, the wild wind that made Deacon Broddy change at night, the wild wind that saved the witch of the grass market from death in the gallows. The beggar's bag was empty of the beggar's body. Next to it, a carton. I frowned. Why would he leave his sleeping bag there, under the rain? I walked on, already putting these thoughts into the bin of bygones, when I noticed little circles in my path. They were difficult to discern against the black stone of the paving. They were money. 1 penny, 2 pence. I turned my head left and caught sight of the path again. Where was the coins, freed from it, had rolled to the last exchange just before I set round eyes. I managed to kneel, clumsy, gripping my cane with a shaky strength, my nerves bombarding my brain with messages of pain. And I took the red coins with my right hand. The dark flagstone was wet and sticky, and so were the coins. They were like brown stained hands. I walked back despite my limping, thinking it was important. Dropped the coins near the carton, taking my back closer to the ground. They were the beggar's only possession. Where could he be, with his sleeping bag all wet in that sandy corner next to that empty carton, in the wee small hours where no one was to be seen? A gust came to my eyes and made me blink. Half a tear appeared in each of my eyes, and I felt uncomfortable. And the end is in the book.
Beautiful, Julia. Thank you so much. I'm going to be reading from my piece called And So They Danced, and it's just an excerpt from the middle, so you will also have to go read the rest in the book. Despite the mountain's reticence, the wind visited often, bringing seeds and stories and songs. Slowly, the mountain's steep, stony skin grew into a smooth, gentle slope, and its scraggly trees multiplied into dense forests. Fed by the snows and encouraged by the wind, the trees nestled into their mountain, ever chattering in their many voices, crisp oranges, pliable greens, damp blues and browns, for they loved sharing stories. The trees one day grew weary of their mountain's silence and rustled, "Awake, you mountain! What keeps you so hushed?" Do not call me mountain, the mountain said, for I am no more than a hill now. I am melting as if I were no greater than the snows. The trees shook, and a few of their leaves joined their siblings on the floor. The snows are quite great. The snows can rip us up by our roots as if we had never laid them. You are no greater than they. I was once. Certainly, you were unbending and hard. That did not make you great. Consider your friend, the wind. She cannot pierce our trunks, and our branches break her songs into howls. Yet does this steal her strength? The mountain quaked. Of course not. She could snatch you from my skin just as the snows. The tree said, and yet rarely does she. Instead, she bends us. She teaches us to trust our roots even when our limbs stretch so high the clouds cover our feet. She reminds us of our strength, and this makes her great. The mountain sighed. The wind is great indeed, but I am not like her. I once pierced the clouds, and now they forget my name, and well they should, for it is no longer mine. I am being unwritten. Oh, dear mountain, the wind exclaimed, startling the trees, for she had a habit of appearing unannounced. You once thought so highly of yourself, and now you think too little. A mountain's story is many. I have seen mountains that quake and split like seeds, mountains that dance as if they are made of water. I know mountains of azure and cream, their ridges crested with running salmon. They burst from nothing and sink into inky soil with each evening and morning and hide during the day. These are no less, no more mountain than are you. Poetic, said the mountain, but I am less of myself. Each year, more trees find home in my soil. Each day, you carry more of me to other mountains. You reduce me to a hill. My dear mountain, you are less of what you were, but that does not mean you are less of who you are. Did you not hear the trees? When the sky bids them fly, you ground them. Do you not see the beauty of it? The clouds know you anew. They find you in the trees' canopies and in dust exposed. Your heart now breathes in ways stone never allowed. The mountain kept its heart buried deep and wrapped in magma, as all mountains' hearts should be. I know that you are in the air, friend, but I do not like the idea of being so naked. The wind laughed, tenderly stroking the mountain with her hand. Few do, dear mountain. You are still young, and it is a terrifying thing to be vulnerable. But when you are old, you will trust me, as do the trees, and then we will dance. This excited and troubled the mountain, and having no boulders to cleft, it furrowed its shifting soil. The trees wrestled with the wind, their toes shuffling the mountain's skin to their liking, and the snows blanketed the ground, muffling the mountain's voice. All the while, the mountain brooded, convinced that to be mountain and to be dust were as different as life and death themselves, and only great fools believed that one was as wonderful as the other. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Katie. That was incredible. And thank you, Julia. We have a question here for Julia, but I'd like to hear from Katie as well. Where did the inspiration for your wonderful story come from?
Okay, so my inspiration came from the city. In fact, I was doing mostly the same as my main character, and I found a sleeping bag and I found coins in the ground. So it's like I just added some magic to it.
That's wonderful. Katie, how did your inspiration come?
Yeah, I was thinking a lot about different kinds of strength. And I love the sort of like the poetry of mountains and wind and the ways that those can be personified in writing. I actually originally envisioned the story as just a little part of a much, much longer thing, which I might still use later. But for this particular moment, it was mainly like, how can I tell a story of what it means to become strong in ways that you once thought were weak, and the beauty of that.
And we have one more question for Katie before we move on. Lauren says, Katie, I love the storybook and folktale voice of this story. Do you often write this way, or is this a different style for you as it's shorter than your usual work?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Definitely shorter than normal. Fairy tale voice is, I think it's something that in shorter things I do explore a little bit. It's funny because the piece that I've been working on all semester has a like kind of fantastic quality to it, but a very different narrative voice. And so I think it really depends on what I'm writing. I really enjoy writing like this, but I think if I tried to write in this sort of voice for something really long, people might get exhausted, but I don't know. We'll find out.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Well, all right. So we have our next three readers. We have our group of three is going to be in the middle here. We're going to be hearing from Monica, Sky, and Abby. As usual, I will introduce them and then they will read. Monica fell in love with books at the age of 3. She's a writer and animal enthusiast from India with a penchant for mysteries, thrillers, and fantasy. When she isn't immersed in a make-believe world of her own creation, she likes to curl up with a good book, movies, or anime. She enjoys writing short stories with a twist in the end, so please look forward to how her short story ends when reading From Arthur's Seat. Sky Wilson is a glittery rugby-playing feminist from near St. Andrews in Scotland. Her poetry is forthcoming in Another New Calligraphy and Vagabond City Lit, among others, and she also writes scripts and screenplays, usually about glitter, rugby, and feminism. Sky did her undergrad at Strathclyde. I probably butchered that, I'm so sorry. And she left her heart in Glasgow. She is spending lockdown learning to speak Gaelic, memorizing an obscene amount of random trivia, and doing some writing. Sky loves ugly shirts and poems about womanhood, hope, and belonging. Her pronouns are she, her. And finally, Abby. Abby Randall is a writer from Colorado who enjoys spending her days with a cappuccino and a good book. She writes short stories with an element of the magical, mystical, or eerie, and is currently working on her first novel. All right, take it away, Monica.
Hey everyone, I'll be reading my piece, Kalpana. A calm prevailed as the horizon stretched out endlessly. The sky and sea blended as they shared the same bright blue. The SS Rani, queen of the sea, glided forward with her 3 white sails fluttering. Her wooden hull still had the shine of a new vessel. Her flag, a gold line on a navy blue background, fluttered back and forth. The berth deck underneath was well maintained, and the hammocks of the crew were close together, giving it a cozy appearance. A strong wind blew Rani towards her destination, Kalpana, the land of lost treasures. Captain Akhil stood at the helm, a solemn expression on his face. The tattered map taped to the table next to him was one of its kind. Filled with curious symbols, it pointed out the dangers they would face on their quest. Many had set out on the journey before them without the map, and none had returned. Captain, First Mate Kunal appeared at Akhil's side. There's a storm approaching. It wasn't there a moment ago, but the clouds are quickly gathering. He nervously handed over the telescope to his captain. Akhil knew, as he stepped starboard, leveling the telescope towards the horizon, that Kunal would take over the helm deftly. After all these years, some orders could be left unsaid. He watched as the thunderclouds gathered with mysterious velocity. Akhil checked the direction and speed of the wind and looked at his compass. The needle was spinning around rapidly. I've never seen clouds like these before. They aren't moving with the wind, he thought. A strong gust blew the ship backwards. The crew on deck jolted from the sudden impact. Captain Akhil quickly regained his balance, pressed his captain's hat firmly back into place, and took charge. All hands on deck, lower the sails, secure the ropes. His men moved swiftly with the discipline of ants, each aware of their role on the ship. SS Rani had only been their home for the past 2 months, but the crew had known each other and worked together over many years. Their previous ship, SS Veera, had been hit by a terrible storm and, Thanks to Captain Akhil's leadership, the crew had survived. Veera, however, hadn't. It was a sore topic among the crew, and they avoided talking about it. They had used all the money they had salvaged from the sinking ship and bought the Queen of the Sea. She was a beauty, much smaller than Veera, but more magnificent. And Rani would deliver them to the lost treasures of Kalpana. The men worked with all their might as the storm descended on them. Waves raised the ship high and crashed it down like a roller coaster. The boats groaned but resisted the water's attempts to breach. I won't let another storm take my ship, Akhil muttered to himself. With renewed determination, he began barking out instructions to his crew. Darkness and cold winds engulfed them. The only light that illuminated their plight came from the ferocious lightning that was trying to split the skies apart. Salt stung their eyes and filled their mouths with the taste of raw fish. Their drenched clothes clung to their bodies. Rain and sea unleashed their fury, rattling the Rani and all those who called her home. This storm is worse than the last one, Pranav yelled as he held on to the ropes for dear life. Don't mention that storm. No one needs to remember that, Satya said nervously, watching Captain Akhil secure the mainsail and ducking as the boom swung by. Don't worry, boys. Captain has saved us countless times. He's not going to let you down today, Kunal called out from the helm. After what felt like forever, the storm seemed to settle down. The sea stopped its thrashing. Just as the boys began to breathe easy, a loud roar reverberated through the Rani, all the way to their very bones. What was that? Pranav asked. Goosebumps prickled every inch of his skin. Thunder, maybe? Satya squeaked. Thunder doesn't come from underwater, Captain Akhil said, doubt clouding his brow. His hand instinctively inched towards the sword and revolver he held on his belt. And to find out what happens next, please read the rest of the story on From Arthur's Seat, Volume 5. Thank you.
That was amazing. I can't wait to read it when it's in From Arthur's Seat. I've got 2 poems to read for you today. The first one is about my Uncle Mick, who loved football, playing cards, and drinking pints. It's called The Jack of Hearts. We escaped the lashing rain to find a pint and a game of cards. You betrayed your brother with a laugh. No one's sadder than me, Dave, but always slipped your niece the card I needed. Blind positivity in all things, they caught it early. You taught me card tricks, introduced me to my new favourite chocolate, spent the summer cycling for fruit, spreading brie too thick on fresh bread. Blind positivity in all things. You were in remission when your son dropped out of uni. You told him better things will come. A packet of crisps and a pint, sun gleaming on your glass and blinding legs sprawled from the ugliest shorts I've ever seen. Lounging on the bench, you looked out to the loch, eyes half closed. Blind positivity in all things. You bet on West Brom every week and rarely won. Their stripy scarves were all around the funeral, no black allowed. Then we went back to yours, had a pint, played some cards. And my second poem is a little bit more cheerful. It's dedicated to my old rugby team. We used to go to the gym together and it was a very wholesome feminist time. It's called The Girls Are Laughing in the Gym. Striding in an army, matching shorts and sports bras, bruises blooming on thick thighs, high ponytails fly from side to side as we strut, scope the weights room, carve out our corner with explosive snorts of laughter, teeth glinting white in fluorescent mouths wide enough to swallow shame, shoulders squared against men who mean to shrink us, but always smiling at other women. We invite them, cackling, into our coven, share our bottles of protein potion, protect each other, learn to look after ourselves, feel our fibers tear, rebuild, renew. That's me. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sky. My name is Abby, and I'll be reading a small part of my story, The Problem with Trumpets. He didn't enjoy the music they played in this cafe. He much preferred classical, not classic rock, but that's also why he sat here to do his work. It forced his focus inward to the space behind his forehead, but in front of the skin folds on the back of his bald head. His table was at the front, centered in the large window. People avoided it because the chill from outside seeped through the glass and under their skin, only noticeable when all the hair on their arms stood raised beneath their sweaters in warning. He didn't mind. Leaving his jacket on saved him the trouble of taking it off. The best part of this cafe was his routine. Every day at 3 p.m., sometimes 3:02 if he got caught up in choosing a scarf, he settled himself at his table by the window, accounting for time outside the cafe to have a smoke at 2:55. His briefcase took an impolite seat in the adjacent chair after he retrieved his work. The score sat open in front of him on the table, pages ready to turn, while black, blue, and pink pens waited to be chosen. The tea he ordered, always black tea, was centered above the score on the other half of the table. By 3:15, he'd finished the first cup, warming his bloodstream back to room temperature after the cold walk from his apartment to the cafe. It was only half a block. The trick was to have multiple orders of the smaller portion of the tea. He always beat the chill from the window to the bottom of the cup. There were 5 other tables in the cafe, though he usually didn't notice the other occupants. The outside framing of the cafe was blue, but it was the kind of blue that made the sky uncomfortable because it couldn't live up to the paint. It was a touristy part of town, and bright colors were expected. They made people excited, made them feel as if they were visiting somewhere new that had never before been seen. Across the street was a pub, golden lights behind deep burgundy curtains. The gold cursive of the sign stretched above the doorframe was missing a letter. The Oil Pub. He hated that pub and that missing letter. It got into his head, caused chaos with the possibility of the timpani staying silent on a downbeat that should be full. It was 3:02. He settled in, picked up the blue pen, and began peering over his glasses at the score while the pen steadily counted the beats in a dance through the air. He hesitated every once in a while, pausing to jot a note or circle a problem, but his hand quickly returned to hovering, conducting an orchestra only he could hear. The fat under his chin was bothering him. It kept distracting the hand that turned the pages of the score. A new mole sat on the skin there. He discovered it that morning upon a cursory glance in the mirror. He couldn't remember what it looked like, but his fingers kept returning to bother it as if it were a scab that he could slough off in favor of the redness it would leave behind. But the real problem was that the horn section was always off in this part of the piece. Somewhere in these 8 bars, it didn't all fit. He determined the horns were the problem only after eliminating the possibility that the violins were at fault. He could hear it now, the trumpets. The whole piece could be ruined by 8 bars that didn't fit, and then that would be the end of it. He tilted his head up, searching for harmony in the corner where the window and the wall and the ceiling all met. A passing umbrella distracted his gaze, sending the trumpets whirling out of control. A face in an apartment window across the street witnessed to his predicament. The woman was old, wrinkles hanging on her face made more apparent by her extreme stillness and lack of expression. Her white hair sat in loose curls on her head, though he suspected it was a wig. His bald scalp hissed with a chill from the window. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Those were absolutely fantastic readings. We have a ton of questions. I apologize. I'm not going to be able to get to everybody's questions just for the sake of time. But let's start out with Monica. We have a question from Harini. I apologize. I know I didn't get your name right. Monica, that was a thrilling excerpt. I was right with the crew through every second of that storm. What does the word Kalpana mean? What does it mean to the story? And what does it mean to you?
So Kalpana, both in the story and to me, mean imagination and creativity. And as you keep reading, you'll realize the importance of imagination that seeps into this story. So yeah.
And then as a follow-up question, we have, there are so many different types of quests. What made you base yours on ships and sailing in the sea?
Well, to tell you the truth, before I started writing the story, I was listening to a song and it had the word ship in it. And that sort of triggered this whole story for me. I don't know where it came from, but it just sort of flowed into my head, and I started free writing the entire thing. So that's how it all happened.
I love that. That's some of my best images, I feel like, come from songs. We have a question for Abby, which I really enjoy because I feel like men get this question a lot, but is it difficult, Abby, is it difficult for you to write from the point of view of a man?
I don't know if I thought about it too much, but the story was based on somebody I saw in a cafe, and I kind of wondered what his life was. And so I kind of took it in my own direction. So it was a little bit of a challenge to make sure it sounded authentic. But I haven't thought about it too much, to be honest. Maybe I should.
And last question we have for Sky. Sky, what is your greatest challenge as a poet? This is from Leslie.
I don't know. I think I've sort of always written poetry, and it comes with new challenges every time you write something. So for my folio last semester, some of my feedback was that I don't know how to use semicolons, and that my last lines weren't the strongest. So I've worked really hard on that this semester. But when I get my feedback for this semester's folio, I'm sure it will be something new that's a challenge for me to work on. But I think the biggest challenge probably for all of us is, well, we're going to have creative degrees and going to have to get jobs. So thank you.
Oh gosh, don't remind me. I just want to let you guys know too, I know from the perspective of the writers, it's a little hard to see the comments coming in, but we just have so many people letting you know that the imagery is beautiful. They're all really impressed with your work, and just, I encourage everybody to go through when you get a chance and read the comments. Next up, I am super thrilled to introduce two of my closest friends actually in the program, Anthi and Bhavika. Anthi made me practice saying her last name earlier and then didn't put it in her bio, so I'm not going to say it. Anthi is a poet and writer from Greece. She was one of our poetry editors in our anthology and a contributor. As a poet, she immerses herself in the connections between imagination and reality that leave behind a trail of colors, sounds, and mathematical equations that she alone recognizes in the world. Today, she is going to read for us two of her poems included in our anthology, Do I Really and Black Heart, that she states are milestones in her development as a poet and human being during her time in the MSc Creative Writing program at the University of Edinburgh. Bhavika Goval is a fiction writer from India. She loves talking about people and the strange, wonderful, and contrary things they feel and do. She has worked in publishing and media as an editor and a features writer. Her work has been featured in places like Vogue and Outlook Traveler, and she is the winner of the Bound Short Story Contest 2019 for her short story, Curdled. Take it away, Anthi.
Hi. Yes, my name is Anthi. Thank you. I will start with Do I Really, my poem. Do I really? The boy says and kisses the girl. I do, I do. Subtle is room, movement detected, and it is erased, intoxicated. Careful step, falsetto tone, calling for a round in this empty room. He appeared like fungus in her personal breathing air. The world spins, and for now, is it really? Is it though? Only for now? Clinging sound of frozen H2O, turning pink and hollow. Pink becoming green is the beginning of my original sin. Never touching lips, the threshold you cross with the I do. Crooked blue necktie, a lonely gray one, and a smile. You always choose you. I do. And now we go to the second one. Very hard. Circling a black spot out in the sky, black clouds crying down, black feathers fluttering aloud, red beak becoming blue and black, loud sots and the raven loses sight. Here's only the pumping blood of a dying heart. It closes its eyes and breathes. Wind whooshes the black spot in the sky, away from the killer's eye. It is the naked land of crystallized fluids. The land comes closer, and the two will become one, with the clouds as witnesses. The raven at last lies dead next to his buried heart. Thank you. Bhavika.
Thank you, Auntie. That was so nice. All right. So, as I mentioned in the beginning, I'll be reading an excerpt from my short story called Aisle 5. And it is completely inspired by my love for Tesco, which is an odd love, but here we go. It's a grocery chain in the UK for all my friends who are not from there. All right. Right now, walking towards this aisle is a young woman asking people to excuse her. Ruth observes her while she struggles to balance a few items on her arms. She has neither a trolley nor a basket, and Ruth is worried that the eggs might slip and crack onto the floor. She doesn't, however, offer to help. The girl dangerously adds a pack of bananas onto her arm, and the pile shudders. She's walking closer now. She's young, has skin the color of charred toast, and her eyelashes are long, and a word that isn't quite coming to Ruth's mind just yet. Gorgeous. Ruth turns and sees that the girl is speaking to her. Your scarf is gorgeous. The girl reaches over, now knocking down the bananas, and touches the edge of Ruth's scarf with ease. Thank you. It's pashmina, Ruth says, elongating the first half of a word too much, with the unfamiliarity of someone who's only ever read the word and never said it. The girl with the pile laughs. Lovely, pashmina, she repeats the word, only a little differently. Ruth turns towards her. Oh, am I saying it wrong? A bit. It's just pashmina. A soft A, like the word rush or lush. Lush. That's the word Ruth is looking for. Her eyelashes are lush. Looking at her, Ruth is reminded of a roommate at university, Leela. Leela and Ruth would sit for hours leaning in front of their low-lit mirror and attempt to curl their eyelashes using coconut oil and a warm spoon. Leela didn't need to do this. She was already blessed with long lashes and dark, shapely eyebrows, even before people began fiddling with theirs. Ruth wonders what Leela is doing these days. She hasn't thought about her in so long. She remembers how Leela would stay up with Ruth on the night before a big assignment and make coffee for the two of them. Why are you having this much coffee? I'm the one who's stressed out, Ruth would say, nose buried in blueprints and plans. Well, honestly, watching you stresses me out. And that's what good friends do. They vibe together. At least that's what I hear. Leela would grin, and the gap in her front teeth would become visible, a feature that Ruth found both ugly and interesting. She remembers that when Leela would be asleep, Ruth would sometimes slip her fingers into her own pajamas and touch herself. When Ruth got married to Tim, for a long time afterward, she thought about Leela. She thought about the gap in her teeth, which Ruth didn't find so ugly anymore. And then she thought some more. Then one day, she stopped. At the till, Ruth hands her shopping over. Is that all, love? The man asks, throwing the items into a Tesco bag. Ruth says yes. The clumsy girl arrives at the adjacent counter and releases the big stash. She catches Ruth's eye and smiles. No gaps. Ruth looks away. Thank you, that's all from me.
Thank you guys so much. Those were absolutely beautiful. I have a question first for Anthi. Your work, one of the things that always strikes me about your work is the rich, vivid imagery. And I wanted to ask you, where does that come from? I know, particularly in Black Heart, I feel like that's just very wealthy.
Yes, I think every poet would say that this is a difficult question to answer because we actually don't know. For me personally, is an impression of an emotion that I want to capture and then I want to translate to the world. And then I'm trying desperately to find an image that fits that emotion. So when I find the image, then it's starting taking shape in a way. So this was exactly what Black Heart was about. I wanted to translate to the world a feeling, and then I wanted to be an omen, and I wanted to have wings, and I saw a blackbird, and the whole poem was created.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. And we have a question for Bhavika. How did you develop the ability to observe mannerisms and experiences so common to India and Indian culture and incorporate them into your stories so wonderfully?
Oh, thank you. I think that I've always been a fairly quiet person, and I am also a very emotional and sensitive person, which can be not useful, but is extremely handy when you're writing. So I find writing about India the most colorful and the most authentic to me. So this story that I've written for Arthur's Seat was actually a little bit of a challenge because I'm using a setting that I don't quite often, but it was a lot of fun. I think it all just comes down to making your sensitivity your sort of power and like constantly scanning and observing things, even if they're all just putting them down and trying to impose them onto some characters. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have, oops, let me scroll down here. Next up, we have Julianne and Nicola. Julianne is an aspiring novelist from Massachusetts, USA. Before attending the University of Edinburgh to study in the fiction strand of creative writing, she studied at St. Anselm College in Manchester, New Hampshire. She prefers writing contemporary fiction in the new adult genre, but she has also had a blog since high school called Books, Travel, Life, etc., where she shares her past trips and favorite books. Along with writing a short story for From Arthur's Seat, she did the website redesign, and it looks fantastic. You should check it out. Nicola Dimitrov is a high-functioning daydreamer who spends his time writing love letters to the universe, a collection of science fiction short stories. His first published work, Calliope's Laughter, appears in the online journal Tint. In 2018, he graduated from Goethe University Frankfurt after completing a thesis on the relationship between religion and science in science fiction. That sounds absolutely fascinating. He continues to pursue this subject in a narrative form at the University of Edinburgh, where he studies the craft of storytelling. For most of his life, he has been exploring different countries, languages, and cultures, and plans to keep enriching and expanding his worldview for the benefit of his writing. You can find out more about him on his website, nicoladimitriov.net. And go ahead, take it away, Julianne.
Right. Hi. Thanks so much, Alex. So I am going to be reading kind of a condensed excerpt of my piece from the anthology called Thrift Store Finds. So here we go. Madeline was surprised to find the journal she found in the thrift store wasn't empty inside, but rather completely filled. As she flipped through the pages, Madeline saw worn cards, boarding passes, maps, pamphlets, and photographs. By the time her friend Kenzie came to find her, Madeline was a quarter of the way through the journal. I found a sweater that's going to look so good on you while you tour college campuses, Kenzie said. And look, the price tags are still on it. Kenzie, look at this, Madeline said, showing her the journal. It's someone's scrapbook. Why would someone donate this to a thrift store? I don't know, but look at those dates. This thing is old. Maybe she died and all of her stuff got donated. What? Why would her family get rid of this? Maybe she shouldn't have any family, Kenzie shrugged. I refuse to believe the owner of this journal didn't have at least one person in her life who wouldn't want to keep this. All right, fine, Kenzie said, taking the journal out of Madeline's hands and walking towards the front of the store. What are you doing? Madeline asked, flinching slightly as she watched Kenzie drop the journal onto the counter with the rest of her finds. We both know you're not going to be able to let this go. So I'm going to buy it for you, and then you're going to drive yourself crazy looking for someone to return it to. Once she was back home, Madeline read through the journal from cover to cover, picking out important details. She knew the person who made the scrapbook was Amelia Carson, who appeared to be not much older than Madeline in her photos and clearly enjoyed being a tourist. She smiled with a baguette in front of the Eiffel Tower, made a funny face at a guard outside of Buckingham Palace, and took a pasta making class in Italy. There were also group photos of her with friends and family. She collected coasters from her favorite pubs. She added captions, quotes, and comments reminding her of her favorite foods and locations in messy print handwriting. She got a short haircut in February that had grown out by June. After a few hours of searching, Madeline found 3 people she thought had the potential to be related to Amelia based on their location and social media: Carson Adams, Samantha Bailey, and Maggie Green. Madeline reached out to all of them to explain she found the journal and hoped one of them would be able to claim it. She attached a few photos of the journal and its contents, so one of them will be able to identify Amelia. 2 weeks after Madeline's social media search, Samantha Bradley claimed the journal belonged to her grandmother, and the 2 agreed to meet at a local coffee shop so Madeline could return it. I brought a few photos of my grandmother so you knew I was telling the truth, Samantha said with a small laugh as she pulled a folder out of her tote bag. She looked like Amelia had in the pictures taken in April of her trip, and around the same age. The biggest difference Madeline could see was that Samantha's hair was darker. Madeline looked down at the images of Amelia. Some were already in the journal, but others showed Amelia after her time in Europe. Some new ones included one of Amelia on her wedding day, one with her surrounded by what appeared to be her children and grandchildren, one at the Great Wall of China that couldn't have been too many years after Europe, and one of her and Samantha at Samantha's graduation. She seems like a lot of fun, Madeline said. Oh, she was something else, let me tell you. She loves to travel, but she was also a strong advocate for spending the rare day in your pajamas, watching movies, and eating as much junk food as possible. Well, I'm sure she would want you to have this more than she would want me to, Madeline said as she passed the scrapbook across the table. It felt strange passing the journal off to someone she had just met. Even though logically Madeline understood that as Amelia's granddaughter, Samantha probably knew all of the stories within the journal and had seen the pictures, Madeline still couldn't help but feel like she was handing over a friend's secrets. The gap year book, Samantha said, flipping through the pages. This had to be the adventure she talked about the most. It was her longest one. She left right after she graduated and spent nearly a year and a half living away from home, learning, traveling, and trying to gain as many experiences as she possibly could. They chatted for about half an hour, but they always seemed to come back to Amelia. Samantha smiled down at her grandmother's scrapbook before looking up at Madeline. I don't know how this journal ended up in that thrift store, but I'm so happy you found it and made a point to return it to my family. And I'm glad you enjoyed looking through my grandmother's memories. There are going to be a ton of exciting things coming up in your life, Madeline, and the only advice I can give you is advice my grandmother would swear by. Buy yourself a journal. All right, thank you.
Thanks for that, Jillian. This is amazing. I'm going to be reading an excerpt from the short story that I submitted for from Arthur's Seat. And the story is called Exploding Sun. For future Nobel Prize winner, my little brother wasn't what you would call smart, not in the conventional sense. Tom had the attention span and emotional intelligence of a 12-year-old. What distinguished him from the average 5th grader was his highly developed sense of insignificance. He knew with vigorous certainty and from a very early age that life was meaningless, and there wasn't any higher purpose, grand design, or ultimate goal to our existence. I remember the long nights we spent talking as kids. I would lie on the top bunk bed, looking up at the plastic stars we had glued to the ceiling, listening to his disembodied voice washing over me from all sides. Sam, we live on a bowl of rocks and mud, he said one night. We're rotating around the sun. It's like a giant fire is what Mr. Thompson told me. One day it will explode and everyone will die. All of this he delivered in an even, matter-of-fact tone. Even Dad, I whispered. Even us. In retrospect, I think Tom was right. I suppose I should have looked up, seen the murdering ball of hydrogen in the sky, sat on the ground and just waited for my time to come. This was, he said to me once, the most sensible way to go about this futile existence that was forced upon us. Nevertheless, grudgingly, Tom kept at it, living, waking up, putting on a pair of pants and a shirt, and scribbling away. What he called his work consisted of him pouring the stream of consciousness which he was no longer able to contain onto the pages of his diaries. He wrote frantically, illegibly, disregarding punctuation, spelling, page orientation. He began sentences in one language, then switched to another halfway. He drew charts, jotted equations, analyzed trajectories. Eventually, I presented Tom's work under my name. My only contribution, despite the fact that the Nobel Prize was technically assigned to me, was fixing Tom's spelling. We had an argument over the title, but in the end, he had his way. Where is Your God Now was published in the winter of 2030 and was essentially an expansion of quantum theory. It was a beautiful piece of scientific inquiry, a triumph of rationality over wishful thinking. Tom had deduced, purely by extrapolating from the known laws of the quantum world, that the fundamental building blocks of matter had one more characteristic in addition to spin and position. They had a life cycle. If his theory was correct, the elements of the periodic table would slowly start to disintegrate in order from lightest to heaviest. Hydrogen and helium would be the first to go, so he directed the university equipment at the sun and recorded a shift in its luminosity consistent with his hypothesis. That meant the inevitable heat death of the universe will result not from proton decay billions of years in the future, but from a decay of the Higgs field. In only a couple of decades, the stars in the night sky will extinguish one by one. Our sun's fuel supply will run out, and our home star will become a mere ball of iron and nickel. No longer trapped in its gravity well, the planets of the solar system will shoot off in different directions, embarking on a solitary journey in a dark and lifeless universe. Humanity will bear witness to none of it, as the very atoms which make up our bodies will disintegrate into nothingness, along with our dying sun. We have 30 years before the God particle leaves our plane of existence forever. As far as I am aware, Dad and Tom haven't said a word to each other ever since the rainy evening my brother stormed out. All I know is that one day I came home to find a piece of paper in my dad's handwriting, sitting on my dining table. The note read, "For dust thou art, and unto dust shalt thou return." Genesis 3:19. Thanks.
Thank you so much. That was absolutely fantastic. And I want to say I just wanted to read a couple of the comments here. The line, "One day it will explode and everyone will die," I love it, from Leslie. And Amalia says that all these readings are very, very moving. I just want to say thank you again to everyone who's read today. You have all done a wonderful job. First question that we have is for Julianne. Lena wants to know if you journal.
Yes, I do. So coming up with this anthology piece was kind of tricky for me because I don't typically write short stories, and I actually find them a lot harder to write than longer stories. So I looked around my room, and this story is very much based off my own journal. Slightly. The photos are different and the rest of the story is different, but the idea of a journal, yes, it's mine. And yes, I do journal quite a bit.
That's absolutely fantastic. Can you show us that journal one more time? That is just beautiful.
Sure. So here, I'll do some promo for it. It's from I got it as a graduation present. It's handmade from a woman in Maine. And I literally have everything you could think of in here, every card, pictures, just a bunch of random stuff from, and this is just since I got here in Scotland in August. So that's that.
That is absolutely incredible. That's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing. And a question for Nicola. Sorry, let me scroll down there. There we go. I'm going to comment that the theme of the never-ending battle between God and science in the narrative is absolutely incredible. And a relevant question from Carolina Ray. Nicola, do you think that science and religion contradict each other?
That's a great question.
It's a very big question.
Yeah, to keep it short, I think that both are, in a way, we approach the questions of our existence in different ways, and both things are essentially trying to explain the same thing. And this is the question of why we're here. And I don't know, I think both fields have a lot to offer us.
Thank you. And a follow-up question for Nicola. What about the universe and the cosmic scale intrigues and inspires you the most in your storytelling?
Can you repeat the question?
What about the universe and the cosmic scale intrigues and inspires you the most in your storytelling?
Oh, so what in the universe inspires me most? I guess, I don't know. I find the idea of black holes fascinating. They're just those enormous, ravenous monsters that consume everything in their wake. I think black holes are pretty cool.
Black holes are incredible. Yeah, I could go into a whole spiel about that with you. The imagery was absolutely fantastic. So that's all of our readers today. One more time, I just want to say thank you for joining us. You've been fantastic. Thank you for all of your questions. We have one more stream tomorrow at 11 a.m. British time that's going to be hosted by Lauren Thurman. So please tune in if you have the chance. And as always, you'll be able to rewatch as much as you like here, as well as rewatch the stream from yesterday and the stream from tomorrow once that's done and passed. So I'm going to go right back into the Hollywood Squares mode. Just so everyone can say thank you so much. I want to say thank you to all of our amazing authors. And don't forget to buy the book. It's fantastic. I'll put the link in the comments. And everybody, you can unmute and say goodbye.
Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Alex, for hosting. You're an incredible host.
You're easy to host. You guys have been fantastic. Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.